All right. It's time for Buckeye Grove Instant Access.
It's about time.
With the latest breaking news, analysis, and much, much more from around the world of Ohio State. Brought to you by BuckeyeGrove.com and the Unscripted Ohio Podcast Network.
You're so money and you don't even know it.
Let's move quickly and hand it off to our host, Kevin Noon.
It's time to start running!
Hey, welcome to the BIA Podcast. I am your host, Kevin Noon, and I am glad to have everybody here as we're going to talk a little football recruiting and some college basketball in segment 2. We will have a familiar voice online here in a second with Joseph Hastings, our great recruiting writer, but we have a very special guest as well with class of 22 Ohio State commit CJ Hicks, the nation's number 10 player in the newly minted Rivals 250 for the class of 2022. You know, a guy that honestly, as a 5-star, I think could even go higher than number 10. We'll talk about rankings and all of that here in a second, but I want to welcome everybody in. First and foremost, let's welcome CJ in. CJ, welcome to the show.
Hello, how are you doing?
Doing great. And, of course, I want to bring Joseph in as well, an old regular here with me on the BIA podcast. How you doing, man?
I'm doing excellent, Kevin. How are you doing today, man?
Doing great. Dealing with some back issues, but I'm getting my PlayStation 5 on Saturday, so I'm trying not to focus on how bad my back hurts and how much I'm going to enjoy finally catching up to you, since I know you've had your PS5 for what is it now? A couple of months. I'm just trying to look up to you, man. I'm just trying to look up to you. But
yeah, I've had mine since early December. It's been great. Hopefully you can get yours soon. Supposed to be arriving this week, right?
Yeah, I'm getting it on Saturday allegedly, but I won't bore our listeners with that. They're much more excited about talking to CJ than hearing me talk about video games. And it was, first and foremost, CJ, how's this offseason been going for you? I mean, in Ohio, you guys did have the opportunity to have a season. I had the opportunity to see you in the Ohio high school playoffs. Definitely playing both ways in that game. A great offensive touchdown in there, and you guys just I don't even remember who it was. I think it was the Baden game that I was there for. I mean, you guys just really took it to them. Great season. How's this off season going for you, man?
It's been good. Just staying in the weight room, getting bigger. I'm 220. I stay between 220 and 225 now. I'm running track this off season as well, so I'm just preparing for that.
You know, CJ, as Kevin mentioned before, you're the number 10 overall player on Rivals, top-ranked outside linebacker. So, obviously, anyone who watches your film can see that you're one of the top players in the country. But even so, what are you hoping to work on the most this offseason, heading into your senior campaign? What parts of your skill set have you really been focused on the most?
My pass rush and my covering skills. That's all I'm really focusing on right now. Because a couple times I had 16 sacks this year. There was a couple times that I let the quarterback get outside of me, and I've been working with my cousin, BB Rob Landers, with that. And I've been just working with Tyree Kendall. He was a safety for the team up north, but he went to high school with BB, and he's like family. So I work with him with the covering skills.
That's awesome, man. And as we mentioned, you kept your spot at number 10 in the newly minted Rivals 250. Obviously, just one of the top players in the country. What does it mean for you to be ranked so high and, to keep that 5-star ranking in this new update?
It's a true blessing. But in all honesty, once we get into college, rankings doesn't really matter anymore. It's all about who wants it more and who has the grit to get through the season.
We all love to talk about rankings or whatnot, and it's great for all of that. But I mean, people also want to talk about the guys that are not part of the class. And while you may be, according to the Rivals 250, the number 10 player in the nation, in Ohio State fans' hearts, you're the number 1 recruiter out there. So we know that you're out there working that recruiting trail as much as you can. Who are you working on right now? I mean, we hear all the names and we know that you guys have this great, you've got various text message threads or whatnot. And, everybody sees what you guys have been doing on social or whatever. Some jokes out there with quarterback Quinn Ewers and the Twitter avatars you had. But who are you working on right now?
Xavier, the safety out of Iowa. Zach Rice. Kojo. Kewan Goodwin, the offensive lineman. Zion Broch, the safety from
Vegas.
Bishop Gorman.
Yeah.
There's a couple other names out there too.
Now, CJ, it's interesting because you're in a advantageous position being a commit compared to the coaches, as you can reach out to these players whenever you want to. You can reach out and talk to them about whatever. There's no contact limitations for NCAA rules. So when you're talking with them, whether it be casual or strictly about football, what is your pitch to these top targets that Ohio State is recruiting? What's your overall message to them?
Just come be great, like I keep saying. Even though we did lose to Alabama in the national championship this year, we're building something, as you can see in the 2021 and 2022 class. So just come be a part of it and help us win the national championship. That's our goal for the next five years.
Absolutely, man. And something that's funny that you posted on Twitter recently. You put up a pic of you as Dwayne Wade lobbing up that infamous pass, lobbing it up to LeBron James, who was Deshaun McCullough in that photo. Now that begs the question when I initially saw it: who is the best recruiter in this 2022 class?
I'm not gonna say me. I'm not gonna say him. I just know that both of us work hand in hand together, and we do a really good job of what we do.
You're listening to the BIA Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Noon. You are being joined with Joseph Hastings, our recruiting writer, and, of course, the nation's number 10 player for the class of 2022, linebacker CJ Hicks out of Kettering, Ohio. That's a mouthful for me to say. We've seen a couple of times where y'all have talked about breaking the internet, and, we've seen some big commitments come to follow that. Should Ohio State fans expect a boom soon? And then I've got a follow-up. Joseph and I, we have a little bit of a script here, but I've got a follow-up question I want to ask you on the backside of that.
We should have one in a couple weeks, maybe. I still have to talk to him, check and see if he's coming. But yeah, for sure, there's going to be a couple booms coming soon.
My follow-up here that we don't have here, the NC2A came out and extended the dead period to the end of May. Now, you're an in-state guy. You certainly are not far away from Ohio State. You know plenty about Ohio State. You certainly have the opportunity to, hop in the car and when we're not, under 8 inches of snow, and it's been like in the 50s here in Columbus today, so it's all melting, thank God. But, it's not a situation of where you feel isolated from Ohio State. But just how much of a disappointment was it when the NC2A came in and said, okay, for you guys that are not committed anywhere, you still can't go out and visit. And for you guys that are committed, you still can't go out and go visit places that you've already made these decisions for. What does that mean to you?
It's kind of hurtful, to be honest, and it's going against getting more players to commit, because some players' parents are even saying that we're not allowing our son to commit until he can be on campus and see the schools that he wants to go to. And it makes sense because, as you can see, a couple of weeks ago, Damari Austin put it on Twitter. How can you let players go play in 7-on-7 in different states, but you won't allow them to go to the schools they committed to or make a big decision on to the school they're going to, and you can't just go visit the school? So it's kind of hard, especially since I'm an hour away from Columbus. I'm really not that far. And I can't even just go up there and just see some of the guys.
So, CJ, it's interesting with the point that Kevin brought up there about the NC2A extending the dead period. You and Deshaun publicly on Twitter made the April 16th kind of visit date, at least you hinted at seeing him in Columbus. and that would have obviously been after the initial dead period deadline of April 15th. Are you all still planning on organizing some sort of event or some sort of, visit, at least amongst the commits, maybe potentially a target or two, even if it is going to be during the dead period?
We might get together soon in this dead period, but yeah, Deshaun, I, and Caleb, and a whole bunch of other commits and other just players that are thinking to commit to us are all planning to visit together. If all of us can't come at once, then we're going to break it up to where at least some of the players that's not committed are with someone that is committed, so they can make them feel comfortable and be around people they're going to be around with for 4 years.
Good to hear, man. And switching over from your recruiting to your commitment in general, we know that you're locked in with the Buckeyes. What has kept you on board with Ohio State ever since you committed to the program back on May 1st, 2020?
Everything, to be honest. Coach Day, I love the way he is with the players, the way he is with just his family. He treats everybody like family, especially with Coach Washington, the coaching staff, and how everybody's staying home and not leaving, and just the players that's committed in 2020, or the people that are signed in 2021, and just players that's committed in 2022 now. Everybody's just welcoming everybody with open arms and just treating everybody like they are brothers.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned Coach Al Washington, because he didn't only help to recruit you in this class, he also assisted in getting Gabe Powers and some in this 2022 class as well. What makes him such a special coach and recruiter, as well? Kind of peel back the curtain a little bit on Coach Washington and take us into what makes him such a special coach.
He's young, and he can bond with the players a lot, because even though he didn't play linebacker, he has experience, and he's a Columbus guy. So him just building that relationship with us, and just he always keeps it 100 with us too. He never tells us stuff we want to hear, as you would want a coach to do. Because once you get up in college, you're going to be the same way. They're not going to tell you. They're not going to sugarcoat anything. So I love how it just is with the players, and just how he's a family guy too. So I love that.
Yeah, and speaking of him not sugarcoating anything, I didn't get to actually talk with you about this, during the time that he was kind of linked to Tennessee and could have potentially accepted a defensive coordinator job there. But did he ever talk to you about that and the possibility that he could end up with the Volunteers?
Yeah, I texted him and we had a long conversation about it. And he told me, he said I would be one of the first players to know what his decision was, and I was one of the first people to know what his decision was. And he, like I said, he doesn't sugarcoat anything. Like I said, he told me when he was thinking, he told me he was actually thinking about it, but he doesn't want to leave something that he's starting at Ohio State.
Interesting, man. And take me through your reaction to, hearing from Coach Washington that he was going to be staying. How relieved were you, and to put it that way, that, your future position coach was going to be there in Columbus by the time you signed?
Me and Deshaun were both really happy, because Coach Washington played a big part in both of us committing, like I said. Yeah, that's really it, to be honest.
I want to jump into something that, we earlier were talking about Gabe and Deshaun and yourself. And, we look at some other linebacker classes that Ohio State's brought in, and it's like, okay, this guy fills this role, this guy fills this role. Here's an opportunity for you maybe to self-scout yourself and then scout Gabe and Deshaun. What do each of you bring to the table?
Well, versatile. As you can see, we both play both sides. All of us play both sides of the ball. So that just lets you know that we are very versatile. We're all 6'4", 220 plus. We can move. We're not just one's not just sitting there rushing all the time. One's not just sitting there covering all the time. All of us can do everything. We're very open to doing whatever it is to help the team, no matter what it is. And we're all not selfish. Like I said, we're all just worried about helping the team and making sure we walk out with the W.
A little earlier. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
We all made it super far this year. Deshaun made it to the state championship. I made it to the state semifinals, and they made it super far in the playoffs as well.
Awesome. And earlier you mentioned the 21 class in addition to your 22 class, and you with Ohio State going to the college football playoff back-to-back years. I mean, obviously the future at Ohio State and Columbus is super bright with the coaching staff that's in place. Just so much young talent that's already on the team that'll be coming into the team. What do you think that yourself in this 22 class can accomplish during your time together here at Ohio State? Whether it be 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, just, everybody kind of being on their own timeline.
Like I stated beforehand, we're all gonna come in with the mindset that we're gonna help the team no matter what it is. All of us already had that conversation with each other. Even if we aren't starting, play a little bit of special teams, we play a little bit on offense or defense, we're gonna help the team walk out with the W, and that's all that matters to us.
Great stuff. And CJ, we really appreciate your time and you hopping on to the BIA podcast. Before we let you go, is there anything else that you'd like to add before we end this convo?
No, sir, not really. Just go Bucks and stay tuned for this next year. We're going to bring in a whole bunch of people.
And I think that's just music to the ears of all Ohio State fans. They love following recruiting. They certainly love their in-state guys. This is a state that's just, football crazy, from Pop Warner up through preps, through college, through the pros, even if the Bengals are the Bengals right now. But things are looking up in Cleveland at least. But I want to thank CJ for being part of the show, and I also want to thank Joseph for being part of the show. And we're going to talk a little basketball on the other side of this quick break. Hague Water Conditioning has been treating well in city water in Central Ohio with American-made water filtration products for over 60 years. Have a water quality problem? The water treatment experts at Hague know how to solve it. Not sure if your water softener is working? They will test, inspect, and sanitize any brand of water softener for only $20. Schedule a system checkup or water test today by calling 614-836-2195 or visit them online at HagueH2O.com. That's HAGUE H2O.com. Welcome back to the BIA Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Noon. I want to thank Joseph Hastings and CJ Hicks for joining us in segment 1. A lot of great stuff there. And we're going to move over to talk a little college basketball at this point. And your Ohio State Buckeyes getting ready to take on Michigan State, 9 p.m. Last road game of the season. 3 games left to go this season at Michigan State, and then home against Iowa, and then home against Illinois in a really challenging Big Ten race. Ohio State sitting 12-5 going into the day, 1.5 behind that team up north. The chances of catching them for a regular season title they probably have exited the building at this point. But Ohio State really trying to hold on for a top 4 seed and that double bye in the Big Ten tournament. Ohio State 1.5 games behind Michigan. Purdue's a game and a half behind Ohio State. So I still think winning 2 games here really erases all doubt. I think winning 1 game certainly goes a long way. You can't go 0 for 3. And it all starts with Michigan State. And Michigan State certainly had that big win against Illinois, which brings Illinois back down to the pack. Illinois is only a game behind Michigan and a half game ahead of Ohio State, and the 2 teams play each other again. And Ohio State already has a win in Champaign-Urbana. The return date at Ohio State is going to be a big one. But I want to talk about that game against Michigan, 92-87 on Sunday. Certainly had the feel of an NCAA tournament game. Not only an NCAA tournament game, but like a second weekend game, or even a Final Four type of game. It was tremendous. And I, like everybody else out there, I watched it from home. I watched it on TV. Griffin Strom was there for us for Buckeye Grove covering it. I've really put the basketball coverage in their hands this season between himself, Jacob Binge, and Marcus Horton, and they've done a fantastic job. So I had the opportunity to watch it like everybody else from my sofa. Maybe had a cold beer in hand, maybe didn't. That's not important at this point, but very different perspective than watching it from the shot. And honestly, Ohio State played Michigan slug for slug almost the entire game. And I really, I don't want to focus on one play or another as being the turning point, but I'm going to focus on one play, and that was the ill-advised attempt of a pass by Justice Suing, getting a little too fancy, going behind his back, racing down the court, committing the and one foul. Really ends up being a 5-point swing in a game that Ohio State loses by 5. It really was a game where you just couldn't break serve, and service got broken there, and Ohio State wasn't able to recover. And it was one of those games to where if you look at the scorebook, all of Ohio State's points came from 3 guys, with Dwayne having 30, EJ having 23, and CJ having 15. So with my handy-dandy Ohio State math education there, that's 53, carry the 1, cosine of pi, 53, 63, 68 of 87 points came from those 3 players. You have, no points from Justin Arns, a starter. They were all over him like, stink on what. He had, never had really a clean shot in that game. Justice Suing had 6 points. Kyle Young had 5 points. So from 3 starters, you get a combined 11 points. That's going to be tough. It's going to be tough, but Liddell, Washington, and Walker all played well enough to carry the Buckeyes, and they just came up a little short. Now, a lot of people have been really concerned, like, well, that we've seen this team's ceiling. No, we've not seen their ceiling. Michigan is who Michigan is, but is Michigan going to come out and shoot as well as it did from 3? They had a lot of shooters that were coming in a little on the cold side. And yes, Ohio State seems to bring out the best in opponents when it comes to their outside shooting. And I'm not going to say it's because Ohio State invites it, but, this Ohio State team is so much further along in terms of its offense than its defense. Kind of 180 from some previous Ohio State teams where the defense was a little bit ahead, or a good bit ahead of the offense. So, you look at the game and, Hunter Dickinson, he's 8 of 14, just a monster down low. Ohio State really doesn't have an answer for him, but you go and you look from outside the arc, and, Chauncey Brown is 3 of 4. Eli Brooks is 3 of 4. Those were some killers right there. Those 2 guys being able, Eli being a starter, Brown coming off of the bench, them coming in and going 6 of 8 from 3, I think was another one of those differences in terms of the game. But, that game is over and done with, and if all things go well, Ohio State should have another crack at Michigan, at least in the Big Ten tournament, coming up here in a couple of weeks. Ohio State now has to focus on Michigan State, a Michigan State team that went on and beat Illinois earlier this week. And beat might not even necessarily be the right term. They manhandled them. And yes, it was a 9-point game, 81-72. But it was a physical game. Dare I say nasty. Michigan State had a player who got ejected with a flagrant 2, going in and taking it to Ayo Dosunmu. It was just it was a rough game, and Michigan State is playing very well right now. They're up to 6-9 in the Big Ten. They've gone on, beat Illinois. They beat Indiana by 7 before that. They had a couple of losses at Purdue. They lost to Iowa, but then wins against Nebraska and Penn State. So, you're looking at a Spartan team that's won 4 of its last 6. And this Michigan State team is still 10th in the Big Ten. So a win against Ohio State certainly would do a lot for a team that probably needs a lot of help in terms of the NCAA tournament. But you look at Michigan State's schedule, and with some reshaping in terms of conference schedules, this Michigan State team plays on the 25th, on the 28th, on the 2nd, on the 4th, and on the 7th with home and home against Michigan to end the season. And that's a make good from a game earlier in the year. They weren't supposed to play back-to-backs against Michigan. So, believe it or not, Michigan State could do some things to help Ohio State, as Michigan's not going to get to a 20-game schedule, but it's going to at least get a little bit closer after its 3+ week hiatus because of COVID. But, Ohio State can't focus on that. Ohio State's got to focus on Ohio State. Ohio State has to focus on the fact that it's got 3 games left, Michigan State being the first, and then, as I had mentioned, they wrap up with Iowa and Illinois. You want to be playing your best basketball at the end of the season, obviously. Much better than starting off strong and kind of floundering at the end, because we know what kind of happens there. Ohio State has to be able to show it can shake off that Michigan loss and win these games. Winning 3 would be fantastic. Winning 2 would be great. Winning 1 might be kind of problematic, and certainly a goose egg would be pretty poor. 9 o'clock, ESPN is going to be the game. And, how is Ohio State going to answer? Is Dwayne Washington going to stay hot? Are we going to see a more engaged, more productive Justice Suing? We can go back and look at how Ohio State has fared through this season. They have a 17-point win against Michigan State in hand already. They go, and I'm pulling up that game right there, and EJ had 20. Justice Suing had 17. CJ Walker coming off the bench had 10. If Ohio State gets 17 from Suing, that would be something. Dwayne Washington had a horrible game there. He had 8 points. 2 of 10 from the field, 2 of 6 from 3, 2 of 2 from the line in 31 minutes. Very different Dwayne. He is playing so much better than what we saw earlier in the season. Just so much more consistent. And yes, does Dwayne shoot a little too much sometimes? Yeah. Does Deshaun Thomas and LaQuinton Ross and some other volume shooters from Ohio State, do they probably think he shoots a little too much? Maybe. The term volume shooter is one of my all-time favorite terms in terms of in basketball, because just guys that aren't afraid to just shoot. And Dwayne has scored in double figures in the last 5 games. In 30 against Michigan, 21 against Penn State, and then in the teen range the last 3, Indiana 12, Maryland 18, Iowa 16. But that's coming off of a stretch of 3 games where he couldn't even break into double figures. So I think that's very important for Ohio State. But ultimately, going back to the Michigan State game against Illinois, that was a game where Illinois never truly was able to get into things. Michigan State opened up just this big lead. Illinois started to come back to a certain extent, but it never truly got all of that close. As I said, there were some moments that had gotten kind of tense, but Michigan State was up 10 at the half. Illinois outscored them by 1 in the second half, and some of that came at the end when it really wasn't all that critical. Where did the points come from? It was you had Aaron Henry with 20, which, you would expect out of him. But, Rocket Watts with 15. I think that's important. I think when you sit there and you look at the fact that they got 13 out of Josh Langford, that's important as well. When you're getting that guard play from Michigan State, could we be looking at a Tom Izzo team that's sort of kind of rounding into form here at the end of the season? I don't know about that. But I think this is going to be a more challenging game than what we would have said after Ohio State beat them by 17 earlier in the season. You look at the fact that in the game against Illinois, Dosunmu had 17 points, but he was 6 of 18. Talking about volume shooters. Kofi Cockburn was 5 of 11 for 13 points. You look at, it was a case of where Illinois didn't get a lot of points out of a couple of its starters, with 6 between Miller and Grandison. You look at, young phenom guard Curbelo, and he had a dozen, which I think was really important, or this game could have gotten a lot worse. But, you're going to have a Michigan State team that's feeling itself right now a little bit. And that's going to make it fun, and it's going to make it dangerous. And the Breslin Center is always a challenge, but it's not like Ohio State hasn't been able to go in there and win before. So I'm looking forward to it. And I promise you that once we get through that game, once we get through that one, once we get through the next one, we're going to probably do just a full-on basketball podcast where we'll talk about the team as we're getting closer to the tournament, when we're kind of know what's going on at that point. But, that's for another time, another day. I think we've covered plenty here. We talked recruiting with Joseph and CJ, talked a little basketball here. We're going to call it a day for the BIA podcast here on a Thursday. Looking forward to the game tonight. I hope you are too. I want to thank everybody for being part of this show, and we will talk to you here very soon.
Be sure to stay up to date with Buckeye Grove Instant Access when the news breaks or after the big game. Exclusively at BuckeyeGrove.com or anytime on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher as part of the Unscripted Ohio Podcast Network. Hit that subscribe button so you can stay in the know and never miss a single episode.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to click on that subscribe button so you don't miss a single thing, and come visit us over at BuckeyeGrove.com for all the best Ohio State information on the web.